In this video we are going to understand why Qatar World Cup tournament is the best. I know we all remember how many European nations worked so hard to convince the world against Qatar World Cup. To say the 2022 World Cup in Qatar was not met with universal approval is quite an understatement. From the heat to Qatar's rather questionable human rights record to the proposed switch from the promised summer tournament to one in winter, it would not represent a huge shock if FIFA were to remove the tournament from the Gulf state. The tournament was, after all, awarded in a free election of FIFA delegates. They chose the location, so it would represent a huge U-turn for them to change their minds and give the competition to another nation. However, there are various compelling reasons why the tournament is the best ever. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar has been much maligned already, despite there being over 9 years still to unravel before kickoff. Doubtless, the tournament was an ebb and flow in popularity until things finally become reality in the Gulf state, but in this video, at this early stage, I want to have a go at exploring some of the positive things that came from Qatar's successful bid, and some of the prospects the world can look forward to as football's most glorious event heads to the USA, Canada and Mexico in 2026. So, ignoring, for a minute, the intense heat, the specter of Qatari Mohammed bin Hammam, and the acute scope for wildly increased carbon emissions, subscribe, like and share. Here are the reasons why Qatar World Cup was the best. 1. A new heartland. Over the last 20 years, FIFA has demonstrated a commitment to open its product up to a wider audience and take its premier sporting contest, the World Cup, to new heartlands. The USA saw the benefit of this initiative in 1994, before Japan and South Korea became both the first Asian nations and the first co-hosts for the historic competition in 2002. In 2010, the World Cup arrived at a fifth continent, Africa, and a new heartland was reached with the contest being taken to South Africa. In 2022, after a return to Brazil and a sojourn to Russia, the Middle East has been the next bright destination for the Mondial bandwagon, as Qatar benefits from the truly global game. The region is among the fastest growing areas for football in the world and promises to be an endless stream of young, passionate football fans for years to come. 2. A Winter World Cup. The threat of intense heat during the Qatari summer led to the proposals and suggestions that the World Cup should be moved to the winter, giving fans our first ever Winter World Cup. With a summer average daily high of 106 degrees Fahrenheit and rainfall about as likely as Wales winning their first Coupe du Monde, a change of season may be necessary to avoid the furnace-like conditions. For a long time the Western world either ridiculed or derided the change of season proposed, but is there a point to which this is a result of a blind preference for the status quo at the expense of a wider consideration for the pros and cons of a proposed scenario? This Winter World Cup offered the British-based players some protection from the harsh conditions of the UK. Additionally, this allowed the turfs and terrain of Western Europe to recover from the strains upon them. It paused in the Premier League and encouraged more delightful late summer evenings watching relegation battles and title challenges in the beer gardens. It's unlikely to be well received by the majority, but the advantages of a Winter World Cup is by far reaching. 3. Develops fascinating technology for sporting use. Qatar's bid for the 2022 World Cup was the only one deemed high risk by FIFA. As one would assume, this is not necessarily due to political issues surrounding Sharia law and terrorism in the Middle East, but mostly as a result of the unbearable climate during the country's summer months. It is not unusual for temperature levels to touch 115 degrees Fahrenheit in June and July, which was thought not only be a risk for fans, but especially players on a sunlit pitch training and playing in the afternoon hours. However, the nation found solutions to the heat issues by building air-cooled stadiums, fan zones, training sites and other outdoor areas for tourists. So far, nothing of that caliber has been seen in world football, and it could set a marvelous precedent for future events in climatically hostile regions. With the endless sum of money possessed by the oil-rich state, technology built in Qatar not only fascinate, but also helped other Middle Eastern nations develop similar structures for hosting major tournaments. 4. Encourages development of Qatari and Middle Eastern football. According to the updated FIFA World Rankings, Qatar currently sits 96th ranked among all footballing nations. That is significantly lower than South Africa in 2010, the lowest ranked nation to ever host a World Cup. In the entire Middle Eastern region, Iran is the highest placed, although that is only in a 454th on FIFA's list. Their competitive record boasts solely of sporadic successes, with their last WC appearance ending in a first-round exit and no Asian Cup final victory since 1976. With Qatar's tournament now over, one can be certain that young men all over the country are preparing with great intensity in hopes of making what could potentially be their country's football future appearance in a World Cup. Neighboring nations such as Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE and other Middle Eastern representatives like Iraq and Jordan, which have made strides toward improvement in recent years, might also be galvanized to take advantage of sport's most popular tournament being played almost in their backyards. Surely, the next few years will see more money poured into Qatari and Arab football more than previous years. Hopefully, it proves worthwhile in time. 5. A cozy setting. While the other candidates for the 2022 World Cup, including Australia and the United States, could have offered a large-scale, broad competition, the Qatar edition is unique in its small-scale approach, giving the tournament a cozier feel. Currently the 164th largest nation in the world, its 11,586 square kilometers area puts it in comparative comparison with other tiny nations such as the Gambia, Jamaica, and Montenegro. UK property, the Falkland Islands. South Korea was a perceived small nation to have hosted the World Cup successfully, although even the East Asian nation, to co-hosted with Japan, has a landmass over 10 times that of Qatar. This small-scale World Cup encouraged a warmer, cozier atmosphere among fans. The famed fan zones and interaction of international supporters is one of the World Cup's most well-publicized quirks. Traveling fans will have ample occasion to mix in the close quarters of the Arab nation. 6. Tip-top stadia. Soon after succeeding in their World Cup bid, the Qatari delegation announced their intention to furnish the nation with a whole swath of new stadia to provide the backdrop to another historic international spectacle. 9 have been commissioned in total and, along with renovation due on 3 other sites, a ballpark figure of $4 billion has been mooted for stadium-focused work. However, every penny of the expenditure has been splashed onto your screens as the tournament was brought to life in glorious Technicolor. Qatar were acutely aware of their branding and marketing potential and the importance of maximizing the opportunity provided by the World Cup's global audience and the endeavor to give the watching world a truly high-tech spectacle in return. 7. Sharing the wealth. The Qataris government has also proposed a novel method of avoiding the white elephant of disused stadia following the major competition. The legacy of the infrastructure of a sporting event is a common issue for nations emerging on the back of major sporting competition. Both Greece and China have had to contend with oversized, underused arenas following the Olympics, while the future of the Olympic Stadium is a pressing debate for Londoners in the aftermath of our own sporting summer. Qatar's plan to avoid this issue is to dismantle the stadia following the competition and ship them off to developing nations for use overseas. Now, while this plan raises 1,000 technical and practical questions, such as how these supposedly impoverished nations will themselves manage to sustain modern, high-tech stadia, the prospect of many global regions benefiting from the World Cup legacy is one that should be encouraged and explored. 8. A central location. Through this World Cup, one luxury Qatar boasts is ease of accessibility. The Arab state may only border one other nation, Saudi Arabia, but its location in the crucible between Asia and Africa, as well as its being a key destination for many major European airports, this ensured that fans from various different corners of the world were able to attend. Whilst attendances for the 2011 Asian Cup, which were held in Qatar, were disappointing, A current population of 1,696,563 is likely to be dwarfed by the incoming fans brought by the allure of the international spectacle. After losing the 2022 bid to the Arab state, former U.S. forward Eric Wijnaldum suggested that a successful World Cup would need to see an attendance twice as big as the nation's standing population. The convenient time zone also allows spectators to keep up to date with the action with minimal disruption to their daily routines. 9. An African Challenge. As an enthusiast and aficionado of the African game, I am excited by the prospect of one of the continent's teams winning the big one within my lifetime. Pelé once, infamously, predicted that an African side would win the World Cup before the end of the 20th century. And while that forecast didn't become reality, teams from the continent are edging ever closer to that elusive spot in the semi-final. On 3 occasions African teams have advanced to the quarter-finals, but Cameroon, Senegal, and Ghana have each crumbled as the glow of a final place has burned brightly upon them. In 2022, with the European teams floundering in the heat, a pathway was opened for an African side to capitalize and claim a semi-finals spot. 10. Messi's final fling. Football observers appear to fit into 2 camps, those who think that Leo Messi is already the greatest of all time, and there are those who believe that the diminutive Argentine is only 1 World Cup win away from leapfrogging Pelé and Maradona to the top of the plinth. By the age of 21 he had been nominated for both FIFA World Player of the Year and the Ballon d'Or. He won both a year later. He is Barcelona's all-time top scorer, and became, B25, the youngest player ever to bag 200 goals in La Liga. He is the only player to win 4 Ballons d'Or, and has won the Champions League 3 times. Though 34, Messi still continues to perform at PSG. This was achieved as Messi led Argentina to win the 2022 FIFA World Cup, denying France the chance to have a double. Either way, Qatar 2022 proved to be the best World Cup ever.